Welcome to the medieval world, a time of knights, castles, and kings, but also a world shaped by the rituals of daily life. Life that often revolved around the consumption of alcohol. From the noble courts to the humble taverns, drinking was more than just a leisure activity. It was deeply ingrained in the culture and social structure. Today, we'll explore the vibrant and sometimes chaotic world of medieval drinking, the taverns, the feasts, and the rituals that surrounded alcohol. Picture yourself walking down the cobbled streets of a medieval town. You can hear the sounds of horses' hooves and carts, the clatter of blacksmiths hammering away in their workshops, and the scent of freshly baked bread mixed with the more pungent aromas of animals and damp earth. In the center of it all is the tavern, where people gather to eat, drink, and socialize. It's a space where all classes come together, whether it's for a quick drink after a long day's work or to enjoy a lavish banquet filled with wine, mead, and more. In medieval times, the selection of drinks was relatively limited compared to what we have today, but the importance of alcohol in daily life cannot be overstated. Ale, mead, wine, and cider were the four main choices, each serving its own purpose in the medieval world. Ale was the drink of the common people. Brewed from barley, oats, and rye, it was consumed throughout the day. Ale was not just a beverage, it was part of every meal. In fact, it was often safer to drink than water, which could be contaminated. The strength of ale varied, but it was typically lower in alcohol content than modern beers. It was common to find everyone from peasants to nobles drinking it regularly, whether in the morning or late at night. Mead, on the other hand, was a drink made from fermented honey, and it was often reserved for special occasions. Mead was considered a drink of celebration, drank during feasts, festivals, and weddings. It had a sweetness to it, and its potency could vary depending on how it was brewed. For the Vikings and other northern European peoples, mead was synonymous with strength and warrior culture. For the wealthy, wine was the preferred beverage. Imported from southern Europe, wine was often watered down or spiced with herbs and fruits to mask imperfections. Wine was a drink of status, and those who could afford it would drink it at feasts, both in the homes of nobility and in the royal courts. But even in the wealthiest circles, wine wasn't always of the best quality. And then there was cider. More common in regions where apples grew in abundance, cider was a drink enjoyed by many. Just as ale was brewed from grains, cider was made from fermented apples, and it too could range in sweetness or dryness. It was refreshing, especially during the warmer months, and provided an alternative to the more popular Aleutian wines. Alcohol in medieval times was a reflection of the social hierarchy. The drinks you had access to, the type of tavern you frequented, and even the way you drank were all indicators of your social status. At the top of the social ladder were the nobles, kings, and queens. They enjoyed the finest wines, often imported from Italy, France, and Spain. These wines were not just for drinking. They were symbols of wealth and power. Noble feasts would feature large quantities of wine, and it was common to see extravagant wine cellars stocked with the best varieties. Drinking wine was a sign of status, and many of the finer points of dining, such as the presentation of food and drink, were meant to showcase one's wealth. Meanwhile, the common folk had access to ale and cider. The quality of ale varied greatly depending on the region and the brewer, but it was often brewed locally. Taverns in rural areas would serve simple, home-brewed ale, while those in more prosperous towns and cities would serve a variety of stronger Alesh and imported wines. Despite these differences, drinking was a communal activity. While the nobles had their grand feasts and goblets of wine, the commoners gathered in their humble taverns, drinking mugs of ale and cider. However, the communal nature of drinking helped break down some of the barriers between the classes. For a moment, a peasant and a noble could sit side by side, drinking and sharing stories. Drinking was not only a reflection of social class, but also a tool for reinforcing it. For example, the aristocracy often hosted lavish banquets where wine flowed freely, and guests would drink to the king's health, the queen's honor, and to the glory of the kingdom. But drinking also served as a means of bonding. Noblemen who shared a mug of wine or a barrel of ale would form alliances and secure friendships that benefited their political and military ambitions. So, what did getting drunk look like in medieval times? Well, the concept of drunkenness in the medieval world was a bit different from what we think of today. With the constant consumption of alcohol throughout the day, most people had a higher tolerance to alcohol. But, of course, there were times when people got truly wasted. Medieval drunkenness wasn't just about the physical act of drinking. It was about losing yourself in the moment. The tavern was often where this happened. A few too many mugs of ale, and the voice would get louder, the words slurred, and the mood would shift. Conversations could turn from laughter to heated arguments, and what was once a friendly debate might devolve into a full-on brawl. Getting drunk could lead to all sorts of mischief. Rowdy behavior, singing loudly, stumbling around, and spilling drinks were common. But drunkenness in the medieval world wasn't seen as a moral failing. It was just part of the culture. After all, the average person's life was often hard, working the fields, tending to animals, or serving their lord, so the tavern was a place of escape. For a few hours, people could forget their troubles and let go. But getting too drunk came with its consequences. Hangovers were common, and medieval remedies ranged from herbal concoctions to even more bizarre cures. After a night of drinking comes the inevitable hangover. In medieval times, hangovers were an unfortunate part of life. But unlike today, there wasn't an easy pill or a sports drink to ease the suffering. Instead, people had to rely on a mixture of herbs, oils, and even prayers to cure their hangovers. One common remedy was herbal tea. A variety of herbs, including peppermint, ginger, and rosemary, were used to settle upset stomachs. Other medieval remedies involved consuming more alcohol, sometimes known as hair of the dog. This method involved drinking a small amount of alcohol to ease the symptoms of a hangover. Other methods were more unconventional. People might use vinegar, honey, and spices as hangover cures. In some areas, barley water was used to help soothe the stomach. But despite these remedies, the best way to recover from a medieval hangover was time and rest. Of course, the medieval mindset wasn't as concerned with moderation as we might be today. While we might wake up in the morning and think twice about another drink, medieval society didn't have that hesitation. The tavern was always there, waiting for the next round of socialization, and for many, the cycle of drinking and recovery was simply part of life. Drinking wasn't just about socializing. It was also deeply rooted in religion and festivals. Alcohol had a sacred role in many medieval religious ceremonies. Wine was used in Christian Mass as the blood of Christ, and the Eucharist became a central aspect of both religious and social life. Festivals were another major occasion for drinking. Celebrations like harvest festivals, Christmas, and Easter were all times for indulgence. People would gather in the town square, drink together, sing, dance, and celebrate the blessings of the harvest or the religious significance of the season. These were times of great joy and excess, and alcohol played a central role in those celebrations. Medieval drinking festivals were often boisterous, with people from all walks of life coming together to drink and dance. In some cases, these festivals even included games and competitions, where the drinking itself became a form of entertainment. For the nobility, drinking was a demonstration of power and wealth. Royal courts were filled with elaborate feasts where wine flowed freely, and alcohol was just as much about prestige as it was about pleasure. Kings and queens often hosted lavish banquets, and the quality of the wine served was as important as the food. A fine wine could cement a noble's reputation as a person of taste and sophistication. The nobility had access to some of the finest drinks in the medieval world. Wine was imported from distant lands, and mead was reserved for the most special occasions. At royal banquets, it wasn't uncommon for guests to drink and be merry, celebrating the king's health or toasting to the success of the kingdom. But even in royal circles, the act of drinking was not without its risks. Excessive drinking could lead to conflicts, and drunkenness among the aristocracy could have dire consequences, especially if it involved political intrigue or personal offenses. As we wrap up this exploration of medieval drinking culture, it's clear that alcohol played an integral role in medieval society. It wasn't just about getting drunk. It was about community, celebration, and survival. From the tavern to the royal banquet hall, alcohol brought people together and helped them navigate the complexities of medieval life. Whether you were a knight in shining armor, a humble farmer, or a noble at a feast, alcohol helped punctuate the moments of joy, sorrow, and everything in between. The next time you raise a glass, think back to the medieval revelers who, much like us, found solace and camaraderie in their mugs, drinking together to the rhythm of their own time.